The Businessin Wales Podcast, sponsored by Sinclair Group, the business media for Wales. Hello and welcome back to the Businessin Wales Podcast with me, Daniel Bevan. Now, business rates are back in the news once again. After changes in England, the Welsh Government have come and followed suit for changes in the hospitality sector. But this is a big year for business rates in Wales anyway, with the revaluation taking place in April. So here to talk to us about all of that and more is Gareth Jones, CEO and founder of TownSq. Gareth, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks, Daniel. Yeah, not bad at all.
Wonderful.
You?
I'm well. Thank you very much for asking. Not many people do.
Oh, really? Wow.
No, but I'm fine, thank you. And I'm excited to get into this because this is a very important topic, one that I think a lot of business owners, if they haven't got their head around yet, very much need to. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of it, though, tell us a bit about TownSq. What do you guys get up to?
Yeah, so we started TownSq about 8 years ago. We had a company before that called Welsh Ice, which was based in Caerphilly. We grew it to about 600 or so people and had an impact report land on our desk that showed that it had a massive impact to the local economy. And so Mandy and I, we wanted to look at whether it would work elsewhere. So now we've got 9 spaces across the UK, mostly in England, but doing more and more stuff close to home, where we support entrepreneurs to get started with space, workshops, activities, basically to help them focus on what they want to do more and to get there quicker.
Fantastic. Well, more power to you. It's certainly something that we need more of. So let's dive straight into it. I think we should probably front load this with the more recent announcements when it comes to hospitality. But I should signpost everybody to your article in the most recent Businessin Wales magazine, which is landing, well, it's already online and landing physical copies very shortly. A lovely double-page spread, as we call it in the business, really deep dived from Gareth about that. But what was your reaction when you saw this news from Mark Drake for a 15% reduction from hospitality or for hospitality businesses, for music venues, cafes, pubs that have been left out of the original support?
Yeah, honestly, it feels like a reaction because of a lack of consultation and understanding and empathy. I think I come at it always from a perspective of micros and small businesses, and there's not enough of a voice, not enough of an appreciation of how much of the Welsh economy is made up in those, our SME business population is our business community, right? And there's a lack of empathy and understanding of how hard the last couple of years have been. And I think it's good news, but it doesn't really go far enough. It doesn't include, for example, hotels. It introduces more vagaries around who's in and who's out. And the whole business rate system is complicated. Very few people really understand what's going on, even knowing who you talk about. Is it the council? Is it the VOA? Is it HMRC? So I think it's that bit where it just overly complicates something where a lot of business owners have a lot on their plate as it is anyway. So adding in more complexity and uncertainty just doesn't help. People want certainty. They want to know what the kind of concrete footing is that they're jumping off from. And so great, it's good short-term news. We hope it'll be followed up by some kind of longer-term plan. But it just adds more confusion and complexity, I think.
When the announcement was made in England by the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, there was a lot of reaction from Welsh businesses saying it's now more expensive to do business in Wales than it is in England. This seems like a reaction to some of those feelings, but do you feel like that sentiment is still the case?
Yeah, because firstly, it's only 1 year as opposed to 3 years over the border. The second thing is that, and I don't want to suggest of any kind of conspiracy or anything, but the rates, the revaluation is the more important thing here, because 50% of businesses who are going to be affected get small business rate relief. They'll be looking at it and thinking, I don't need to worry about it. I think a lot of businesses see it that way. They see the bill come through, it's zero, and they think, oh, I don't have to worry about it. As the valuations increase, more companies are going to fall into that tapered relief system and then go over the tapering altogether. Small business rate relief isn't a given. We hope it will continue for the long term, but there's a lot of these things happening in the background where understanding the valuation changes will have a longer knock-on impact, I think. And so I think it's all part of that complexity where the relief is good. A lot of companies will think nothing of it because they get the rate relief, but that's not the whole story. And how we can make sure that they continue to get relief and can be aware of this window of time to put a claim in and put a check and challenge in if they think their valuation isn't right it's vital right now for them to do something about that.
Because about 2/3 of businesses or properties in Wales don't pay any business rates at all currently. But obviously, with the valuation changes, and the first time in 15, 16 years, actually, so the first time in quite a long time, we know that the market has changed a great deal since then. It's going to have a disproportionate effect on businesses in the city centres, really, isn't it? Because obviously their property value is going to go up so much. I wonder what your thoughts are in terms of whether there is just a space or a need now to scrap the whole system as it is, because it is so complicated. And if we're doing these revaluations currently and making it more complicated, there must be a better way, surely.
Yes, in theory, you think so. I've not seen a better alternative come through. There's lots of ideas kicking about. Ultimately, this is a big cash generator for local authority services. Exactly as you say there, a disproportionate amount of it comes from city centre premises. But when we're seeing our high street struggling, all over the country, not just in Wales, across the UK, this is something which we need to have a bit more of an informed view on around how we address that. If rates is a barrier to someone taking on a premises, we've got to understand how we create incentives and how we create, the value, which doesn't take away money from local authority services that are desperately crying out for more money. So this is my worry, is that things like small business rate relief, they're very vulnerable just now, because if people are, if governments are looking at small businesses as being the cash generators for these services, that, there's a quiet erosion that can happen to incentives and schemes like that, like I say, maybe are taken for granted just now and might only be £500 a month, but it compounds and it builds from there.
I suppose if it's something you've always had, the business rate relief, or something that you've had for a long time, it probably is something you take for granted, isn't it?
Yeah, and don't want to look into, because it is such a complicated system. The more you, even just looking at your rateable value online, you've then got to apply a multiplier. Well, now we've got multiple multipliers in the mix, and it's just all of this stuff that just creates an uncertain and complex view, depending on what sector you're in, what business you want to run, where you are, how you even come to that value when we've got a high street that's been eroded in terms of value over the last couple of years. So I don't know how we fix it, but we need to have business at the table to come forward with ideas around how we can do that, and how we can have, I think, more of a sense. I think it is that bit where, because there are so many stakeholders, the money goes, the VOA do the valuation, the money then goes to HMRC. That's then provided to Welsh Government, who invest it to local authorities, but it's invoiced from the local authorities, who then pay it back to Welsh Government. It's all of this complexity, right? And so the idea of, as a local business person, investing in your local economy, it doesn't feel that connected. And I think it's that bit which is, I think we all feel a sense of pride in supporting public services, but you just want to understand it better and understand, that you're not just being taken advantage of because you're an easy target.
Now, there is some support that is coming available, £116 million from the Welsh Government. Any business with a £300 increase will get their increase phased in. I wonder if, it's a very simple question to say, is that enough? But £300 doesn't seem like a lot over the course of a year, but we're talking about increases that could be in the thousands if your reevaluation is really, really far away from what it is currently.
Yeah, it is just a spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down, right? Like all it's doing is softening the blow. I think the if that's what we're preparing for is for rateable values to be going up and increasing, it just has to be grounded in some kind of logic and reality. And I think it's that bit again where what we see is a lot of small businesses who don't have a compounded voice, who can put forward their concerns about this, who haven't spent the time or don't have the capacity and bandwidth to spend the time trying to understand the system and understand why these valuations are coming at them.
Obviously, the Welsh Government would say that this is designed to be a fairer way of collecting this tax. And the bigger shops, your big supermarkets, etc., they will be paying more ultimately. But even the Welsh Government's own press release said some businesses will be paying more, some will be paying less, which is a vague way of saying that it is a complicated way of working out exactly who's paying what. I wonder, and I know in your piece you have some advice, I wonder if you can share it with us now, if you disagree with the valuation that your property has been put under.
We've got leases on kind of 10 plus different spaces of different shapes and sizes, and so we've got multiple kind of challenges, and we've got a dedicated resource addressing this stuff, right? So it's a bit different for us because we've spent 15 years having to negotiate this world, and we understand it a bit better, and we understand that you can win, and that it's not easy to even engage with the system and the beast, right? Most SMEs don't have that capacity, don't have the desire, or don't see the value in if they win that battle, especially when we're talking about the difference of £500 a month or so. I mean, the difference for us is hundreds of thousands of pounds, right? So I think it's that bit about how it can be. It's an interesting shift. I think it's come 5-10 years too late around apportioning more to supermarkets and things that have essentially, gutted our high streets, right? I don't want to kind of mince my words too much on that, but I think that is a fair balance, is that they should be paying more towards their business rates. Great, okay. Understanding then how we invest into high streets to make them more accessible to more locally owned businesses is vital. One of our offices in Ostermunach, we've seen it recently. There's a locally owned bakery 3 doors down. A Greggs has opened. They can invest more in R&D and product. They can invest more in marketing. They've got the brand cachet, right? And it's that bit where the more we lose that local wealth and local value, no one invests back in. They see what's happening and no one invests, right? And there's a reason why you walk down any high street in the country now and it's a Identica, because you've got a company like Greggs that can navigate that system better than a locally owned bakery. It's just that connected, and that's why I feel maybe a bit more cynical and about the announcement for the increased rates relief for hospitality, is because that is something that could have been implemented months ago. There could have been more certainty in place months ago had there been an empathy and understanding that, especially for hospitality businesses coming up to April, with the increase in NI, with the kind of broader pressures, the increase in living wage, which are all right. This is the society we want. How we get there and trying to get businesses to do it when they're already at breaking point, that's the bit that I don't think right now is being heard or appreciated.
Sinclair Group has been part of the motor industry for over 80 years, and we've never stood still. Because for us, it's not just about where we've been, it's about where we're going. We believe in progress, embracing innovation, investing in technology, and moving towards a more sustainable future for everyone. We offer new and approved used vehicle sales and service for some of the world's most forward-thinking motor brands. But our drive is always to the future. So whether you're starting your journey or continuing your legacy, visit sinclairgroup.co.uk. Belong for good.
Oh yeah, no, the hospitality and particularly music venues, the margins are so small at the minute that you feel like even a 1% increase in anything it could be the difference, couldn't it?
Yeah, and we've seen these warning signs. 20 years, right? People have the rate of pub closure in the last 20 years is astonishing, right? And what are we doing? We're just further perpetuating that. I moved to Cardiff 20 years ago. There were countless music venues that you would go to see a band on the up. Where'd you go and see a band on the up now, right? There's a lot of these cultural things that are important to us. There's no value in investing in a music venue now. You can't guarantee the market, the equipment cost, all these kind of things, trying to find a property. And I think it's this bit where, what kind of towns and cities do we want to live in? What kind of, services do we want our communities to have access to? Are pubs and restaurants important to us or not? I think they are, right? They are valuable to us. There's only so far I think we can go. And when you look at especially the broader cost of living pressures that have come on, pubs and restaurants, there's less and less incentive for people to invest back in. I think that's the bit that right now it feels like there's more of a papering over the cracks than having a strategy about how we invest back into these businesses if we want them to be around in 20 years' time. If we want to reverse that curve of closures of these kinds of businesses, we need to see it. We need to see it being a preemptive plan as opposed to it being a reactive. Oh yeah, no, we got it wrong. Here's 1 year of 15%. No, that doesn't go anywhere near far enough. We need a strategy that essentially builds the kind of social infrastructure that we value, right?
Oh no, when we had Carolyn Brunel from For Cardiff on last episode, we talked a great deal about Cardiff and the gigs that we had last year, gigs we had this year. So you're preaching to the converted when you talk about the cultural impact of those things. And I'm not just talking about Oasis and Metallica coming to Cardiff. The small venues where you, as you say, you see the bands who you hope will one day be playing in the Millennium Stadium, Principality Stadium, as it is now, as headliners, but the local people who are in those bands, the cultural impact is immeasurable, isn't it? You can't put a figure on it, which is difficult when it comes to necessarily talking about business. But social value is something that business people talk about all the time, and yet we do seem as a society to be deprioritizing those types of things. When I mean, maybe I'm muddying waters a bit too much here, but the rollback of DEI, for example, cultural expression and through the means of business isn't quite a top priority at the very least right now, is it?
Well, and I think we have a massive advantage in Wales with the Future Generations Act to be able to set ourselves apart and to create an environment. And I think it's that bit where I know, all of us, looking at booking our holidays now for the year ahead, if we haven't already, just booking to go to, when was the last time you stayed in a hotel in Wales, right? Going up to, we've got beautiful, beautiful places across Wales to go. Anglesey, Llandudno, Aberystwyth, Cardigan. There's these beautiful places that even just going away for a weekend and spending in local pubs and restaurants and just giving that extra bit of there's lots of things we can all do as individuals, but there's a system behind all that needs to understand and appreciate the challenges. I think sometimes we see these places as being cash cows. It's not the case. We need to support them if we want them to persist.
Absolutely. A point that I think is probably important to make is that there's already, yearly £250 million worth of business rate relief, and I think about £1 billion has been given out by the Welsh government since 2020, which again I think probably supports the point that if you're giving out relief for these for this tax, then probably the system isn't fit for purpose, right?
I think equally that introduces that bit about, and I think this is the issue I have with the relief. It's not relief; it's foregone revenue, right?
Sure.
So I think it's often packaged as, oh, we're giving relief. Okay, it can be seen that way from an accounting perspective, but really it's just saying we're just not going to bill on that revenue, right? I think when we look at what local authorities need, it's an impossible puzzle to solve, right? I'm glad I'm not in that position trying to decide. What we have to say though is that small businesses can't be, small businesses are not a bank for local authorities, right? And we can't then say, well, that's who we can pick on because there isn't a single voice and there's not a single perspective. And without having that empathy of what happens if we make it impossible for people to invest in, if you're opening a pub, you're not talking, 10 grand investment and 10 grand deposit on a lease and you crack on. You're talking multiple hundreds of thousands to invest in fitting out a good pub, right? The seeing something like that as profitable is not a negative. It has to be in order to pay off that and to justify someone's investment in the first place. And I think it's that bit where individual small businesses in the hospitality sector don't have that ability to put across that view. I want to see more foresight. And I think especially now, as we're going into the election, there's a massive opportunity for political parties to say, we're on the side of small business and this is what we're going to be doing differently. And appreciating that is where the executive power is in Wales. We don't, a lot of the larger companies, they don't have executive power in Wales. They are call centres or they're service centres. They are not they're not investing in that sense of higher salaries, etc. So the power is in the small, medium enterprise, population.
Well, you segue perfectly because the thing to bring up is, of course, these changes are coming in April. Within a month, or give or take, Wales will be going to the polls. So, as you say, big opportunity for any political party to really set their stall out on this. What would you like to see any political party come to the table with as a proposal? Is it completely reforming business rates? Is it just simply having a bit more clarity within the system?
Yeah, all of the above. I think empathy is the thing that it feels like right now is missing within all of this. This knee-jerk reacting shows there isn't either the expertise in-house, they're either not listening or not asking, right? And that's the bit which feels frustrating. I'm not saying that's always the case. There's tough decisions to be made, but that's what we need to be seeing, is that small business especially has a voice at the heart of government, and that their needs are being understood and empathized with. And that can always lead to, we hear you, but we can't do anything about that. I think we all recognize that we're in a bit of a, it's the kind of short blanket syndrome, right? Like we all know you can either cover your toes or your neck. We need to have honest and frank conversations about that. If it is we get it, but we still have to be, okay, then we understand where we stand and we can plan around that. I think the anxiety that's coming in for a lot of hospitality owners, especially, but small businesses everywhere, with the NI changes, especially, I put it in the article about how much NI has had an impact in the last 5 years. It is wild, the impact. okay, we all want to contribute to the society. We live in a fantastic country. We have fantastic conditions. We want that to continue and perpetuate, right? But come on, like there has to be an empathy for how far we've come in the last 5 years and how much further businesses can tolerate going. Because if someone is sat there deciding on whether to invest in a new venue, new hires, etc., you're then in a situation where my rates bill could change at the whim of a politician. Okay, that doesn't help you plan for years in advance. If you're looking to invest 300 grand into open a new venue, you've got to have accurate data to be able to build on.
And I suppose growth isn't growth if it's getting slowly eroded every year.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you the confidence to think 4, 5, 6 years ahead. If you think, well, if my figures are going the way that they're going, it's just going to get eaten up further and further down the line, right?
Yeah, just become a buy-to-let landlord, right? Like if your gamble of investing in a venue, it's the excitement, it's all that thing about what you can provide for your community.
Mm-hmm.
De-risk, right? This is the thing, and that's where we lose these services. If there is no return on investment, we de-risk, And it's that bit which I think is the frustrating bit, is that you can put in place a plan for your next 3 years financials. We're having to reforecast because this has changed again, and what are we going to do about this when this lands? It's that stuff which is the bit that prevents people from investing. It's just a lack of certainty, and if the valuation of gold is a good indicator that right now people aren't feeling confident and secure about the future, right?
No. Well, actually, it's funny. There was talk in the office this week about the silver price dropping so much as it did, and gold. And it's something that I've been sort of privately really invested in. Not literally, I haven't been putting any money into precious metals, but it's just very interesting that you see that it's such a good indicator of how generally the world is feeling about the stability, because there's only one thing really that's constant, and that's the price of precious metals going up sort of slowly over time. But anyway, that's a whole separate
It is,
issue.
but I think it's that important bit about how we encourage people to invest more in our communities. Right?
Yes, yeah.
How do we get money out of assets like that and get them into communities? There's some data for a future article that I'm kind of working on at the minute. The gap in funding for companies in Wales is astonishing. I'm not going to give away too much now. Watch this space, but we're talking about a significant. We're talking about 2.5 billion of missing investment capital, not just equity but debt as well for businesses in Wales. And when you're looking at how we can compete with that lack of money being invested into Welsh companies, if you're in that position, then okay, we'll all do our bit. We understand that, but the gap right now is really something.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah,
you've intrigued me. You've intrigued me, but I won't be pressing because I want to read the article. And the benefit of my job is I get to read them before everyone else does.
Sinclair Group has been part of the motor industry for over 80 years. And in that time, we've learned it's not just about cars. It's about the impact we leave behind. We believe in driving change, supporting the people around us where we live and work. Because when our communities thrive, we all do. We offer new and approved used vehicle sales and service for some of the world's biggest motor brands. But what drives us goes far beyond the road. So whether you're starting your journey or continuing your legacy, visit sinclairgroup.co.uk. Belong for good.
So I suppose moving slightly on, but sticking with politics, with the election coming up, and the economy portfolio being one of the key jobs within the Welsh government, I wonder, and it's just an idea that's come to my head, I don't want to make policy on the fly or anything, but I wonder if...
Sound like a politician.
Gosh, no, I wouldn't make that accusation at all. But I wonder if there is a space for a small business minister to come under the Cabinet Secretary for the economy, to considering how much of the economy is built on small businesses, but their challenges are sometimes unique, but almost exclusively small businesses do have a voice and need one, a collective one in government. So yeah, is that an idea you'd back?
Yeah, maybe I'm speaking of this from a bit of a different perspective. With the previous government, I was on the Small Business Council for the Prime Minister, and it was interesting to see from that perspective how hard it is to get such a broad bandwidth of ideas to the table. If you've got an hour and a half meeting with the Prime Minister, you've basically got about 4 or 5 minutes to make a case on something between the group of you. And it's that bit where there are so many of these issues that need effort and focus and attention. I think it's exactly that. It has to be someone whose remit it is to say, we recognise that the Welsh economy is SMEs. we're investing in this by providing someone who understands the sector, who's got those networks established and is willing to get out there and listen and deeply listen and empathize. But having that support behind the scenes to continually improve and to know that what we're doing now might be good, but needs to constantly get better. We need to have that real driven focus on improving and iterating every part of how we support SMEs. Because that's the platform we can build on. That's what we own. Again, it's a personal view, but I would love to see us having that same investment into inward investment as we do for our locally owned and locally rooted companies, because they're the ones that will continue to grow and won't disappear once the incentives go. I think that balance towards growing our own is something which is, I would always argue, needs to be reshifted.
What are those meetings like with the Prime Minister when you are having them?
Bizarre, yeah. Downing Street is a strange old place. You go down one door and it looks like it's been neglected and abandoned for decades, and you go down the other and it's all the stuff you see on telly and fancy and all that kind of stuff. The room we had the meetings in was where they did all the kind of COVID announcements from, so that was a bit weird as well, kind of seeing that. Yeah, but no, it's the thing, and this is I'm being a bit flippant with politicians. Pretty much every politician I've ever met has had a genuine heart and a genuine interest and wanted to do. And we expect way too much from our political class and political system to solve these problems. That said, we can always demand more because they put themselves in that position where they have to put themselves up for this challenge. And I don't believe in the level of corruption and things that I think a lot of the conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff are. But every politician I've met, I don't believe in good and evil and all this kind of stuff. They've got their views and their values, and they kind of drive towards it. But these issues are so complex and so multi-layered that we can't expect everything. What we just want is that decent sense of, and this is where you judge, is the decisions they take, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's reactionary, it gives the impression they've not considered that. Okay, we all make mistakes, and I don't mind that, but let's prevent that from happening. Let's listen more, and let's be at the core of these issues and have that empathy in the mix.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've ever met a politician, and I've met a fair few, who at the very least didn't go into politics wanting to make a positive change. I know it's a little bit of a cliche.
Yeah.
Whether their career ends up taking an odd turn is slightly, here, there, or nowhere. But I think you don't go into politics wanting to do harm.
No, and that's the thing. I think is I can't off the top of my head now, and thinking back to the tragedy of Heaven's death last year and things like that, and you see people who really deeply care about communities, and it is a bloody hard job, and it's a thankless job. And then you do something, and then you get people like me loudmouthing on a mic and criticize. I get it, right? But on the other hand, we've got SMEs who don't have that voice, who don't have a platform, who are not on the news and on the telly every day telling you the way they see the world, who need to be heard and understood and empathized with. And we need to hear that more from politicians, is that we understand, we empathize, and show them with their actions and their policies that there is an understanding at the heart of that.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of noise constantly. And I think when it comes to something we were talking about off mic, actually, was, social media and just the ability to be able to sort of speak into the ether. There's never been more ability to communicate these days. And I wonder if ultimately that does politics a bit of a disservice, because it's hard to weigh out when everyone's voices are equal. It's hard to weigh out which ones you should be listening to, right? X is a perfect example when everyone's sort of chiming in, and especially now you can pay to have a little check mark, which gives you that little bit of extra legitimacy, and yet you've got plenty of space to say what you want and get your opinions across. And yet, if you're someone who's reading that, you can take it all to heart. You can take none of it to heart, but it's really difficult to pick and choose what you should and shouldn't be listening to, right?
Yeah. I'm an old man now, right? So my relationship with social media has changed a lot in the last couple of years. It used to be my life. In time, you kind of realize that there's only so much of it you can put into that, and I try and focus my effort now on either longer pieces or columns and stuff like that, which can get across a more, measured view, I guess. I think with social media, so much of it is reactive, so much of it is hot-headed, so much of it is, I've been in Twitter storms and things like that in the past, and it's just bonkers. You've got people who are not taking a balanced view. They would not have that conversation with you in the street I've been cancelled 3 times in my life. And on each occasion, you then look at it a week later and you think, goodness me, like, I think some people overreacted a bit on this, And it's that bit, I think, where we're interesting people are passionate people, right? Like the people who put across a view. And part of that is, it's not fun being on the fence and being measured. You want to have a bit of, anger and fury about some of these things for people to resonate and care about it. Frankly, a lot of these things are marginal issues. And, if I went back home to my parents, and started talking about business rates, they couldn't care less. Like it's not something which you can talk about with your neighbors and stuff like that. But for SMEs who are trying to make a decision on, do I invest in that hire now? Do I invest in that new bit of equipment? Or do I have to keep some aside to be prepared for that? Yeah, that's the economy. It's boring, right? But it's all those small decisions and transactions that are happening behind the scenes.
And it does matter to people. I mean, they may not understand business rates because they don't need to. They literally don't need to. It doesn't affect them directly. But if their favorite bakery closes because of it, then it does affect them, right?
Yeah.
So, it's something that it's why we're talking about it now. It is important. If you don't know, you've got to get to know, right? But going back to what we were talking about, I just the thought that I had was about the sort of diversity of thought, and we're talking about strong opinions, etc. But it is sometimes the craziest ideas, the ones that work. Someone who I love hearing talk is Rory Sutherland, and more than welcome to come on the pod, by the way, if you see this, Rory. I think you've got a Welsh grandfather or something like that, so there is a tenuous link. But he talks so well about the marketing side of business from a psychological point of view, and this is something that should work in theory in a business perspective, but it doesn't because of the psychology of it, for example. And I suppose we could do with a bit more of those that crazy thinking that isn't actually that crazy when it comes to trying to find solutions for these very complex and in many ways boring, if I may say, issues like business rates, right?
Yeah. So this is one of the fascinating things I think I wrote about in a previous article about we took 15 entrepreneurs over to Boston to go to MIT back in November. And what's really fascinating when I spend time around Welsh entrepreneurs compared to entrepreneurs from any other community when we do stuff with the Global Entrepreneurs Network, anything like this, is that everything is grounded in how do we change the system in Wales, right? And I think there's a real, and I don't know how we'd measure it or anything like that, but I think there's a real disadvantage in how much time and bandwidth people are giving to thinking about what can we do to put the ladder back down and bring more people up, right? And how do we change things in Wales and how do we change that? You don't get that in London. You don't get that in Oxfordshire. You don't get that in other ecosystems that we're active in. People can just focus on what they're doing. And I think that you can't give it enough time to be truly radical because no one has the time to do that. But you give it so much time that it distracts you from your kind of core focus, especially then, picking up on that point when you're in an environment where there's less capital at play, when there's less, resources and other kind of advantages in infrastructure sense. That ability to think of those radical ideas and to be able to put forward a counterpoint, it's what the ROI is, and earlier in my career, I used to do a lot of that kind of bit of trying to put stuff out there where you kind of butt up against some of the kind of authorities and things, but the ROI, the incentive versus keeping our business going and making sure we're on the straight and narrow, that then becomes more important. So I think there absolutely is. There's a I'd say a gaping hole when it comes to radical thought in how we support businesses. Then you get dragged into the left and right of politics that, 20 years ago, it didn't feel like we talked about left and right in the same way that we do nowadays.
No.
Ultimately, it's the society we all want to build. What environment do we want Welsh businesses and Welsh people to live in? And how do we put, to my mind, small locally owned businesses at the heart of those services?
Sinclair Group has been part of the motor industry for over 80 years. That's not just a number, it's generations of trust built on shared values, because family isn't just who you're born to, it's who you choose to stand with, and that's what matters to us. We offer new and approved used vehicle sales and service for some of the world's biggest motor brands, and trust, that's at the heart of it all. So whether you're starting your journey or continuing a legacy, visit sinclairgroup.co.uk. Belong for good.
I suppose, unless you're talking about the extremes of politics, which we won't, but so sort of centre left, centre right, the environment in which business grows is kind of similar, right? There's not a million miles away between the two. The way I always explain it to, and I explain it to Max, our producer, the political spectrum is a horseshoe, right? And the extremes are closer to each other, and then the centre is closer to each other. So whoever's in government, I should say, in Westminster or in Wales, there doesn't have to be this polarizing. If you're left wing or if you're voting for a left wing party, then you have to think from a redistribution point of view when it comes to business, and the opposite as well for the right.
Yeah,
there can be this sort of, I guess, middle ground, centre ground. But even centrism is a bit of a dirty word at the minute, isn't it? Someone's got to pick a side. But as I say, the sort of New Labour left or sort of One Nation conservatism right, they're not a million miles away from each other when it comes to business policy, right?
No, I don't think anyone's talking about socialism and no one's talking about plutocracy, right? I think we're talking about people who are proud to be able to pay good wages to people in their communities, to invest in that and to build a business that gives them value and recovers their investment and makes it worthwhile, right? It's really simple, worryingly simple. Trying to create the conditions for that to thrive and foster are a different thing. And that's where, like you say, the extreme views can provide it's like any conceptual bit. You create the concept car, right, is what actually goes to market is a different thing, but it sets the parameters of what is possible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I do actually want to touch on the trip to MIT because I mean, it seems, and when you were telling me that you were going, I was like super, super impressed. I probably didn't express that because I try and keep a cool character sometimes, but I would love to go and just to see what it's like, one of these Ivy League universities. Is it as impressive as it seems?
Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah, it's interesting when you go because we've done it twice now. You go for a conference, so the conference is at the heart of it, but there is so much activity going on. The way they think about ecosystems, the way they think about support is radically different to how we talk about it in the UK. Maybe in clusters, like I say, in Oxfordshire, etc., you get a bit of a different view of it. But the way that it's set up is fascinating. So we go for a whole week. Normally for the conference, you go for the conference and then you're out. The conference is the R&D conference. So it's basically, all the research and development that's coming out of MIT being talked about, whether it's robotics, whether it's AI, whether it's space, all these kind of fascinating things. But the value comes from what you map to it around the fringes. So going along to, Venture Cafe, which is 300 people in this crammed venue and the level of connectivity and the openness. We met this guy called Dr. Luis Barros who just having a chat with. He said, come up to my office, we'll have a talk. He's a professor at Sloan School, right? Brings you into Sloan School offices overlooking the Charles River and gives you this, fascinating insight on how they measure ecosystems. It's that willingness and openness to engage. And again, it's just that mindset shift. When we just come out of before going over to Boston, I'd been to a presentation on the Local Innovation Partnerships Fund, right? 30 million over 5 years. You've got a room of 40 or 50 people all working out how do I get my hand on this 30 million, right? The first company that comes up and pitches at the conference had just raised 100 million. It's just that different perspective where 30 million is not good enough. When we're talking about investment in innovation partnerships, it's not good enough. We should be embarrassed at that level of investment into our ecosystems. Over there, you've got people who just have a different attitude. And I think it does play out. If you don't have the capital you need to grow a scale up, you're never going to do it. There's almost no point giving them 200 grand because they can't get to where they need to get to. And it's just that shift in, we're not going to be in a position where we're investing 100 million to every company in Wales, although you've got the likes of Butte and things that are kind of a different story because of the infrastructure investment. But the shift to really back our entrepreneurs and to create the system and frameworks around them to support them, that's what's really fascinating to see really working in Boston. Plus an excuse to go to basketball games and all that kind of stuff as well. So, yeah.
Oh, who's your team?
Celtics.
Okay.
Yeah. Max, the producer, is cheering the Celtics. They're not doing too badly this season, yeah.
Fair enough. But so American sports is out of my realms. If you can talk to me about football, you can talk to me about rugby, cricket, darts. Everyone knows I'm a big darts fan. But American sports is just, I don't know what it is.
We'll get you out to Boston. We'll get you to a basketball game. You'll be converted.
Maybe I'll understand it a bit more, for sure. And I know... I know you're a Wrexham fan.
Yes.
And this is a good segue, actually, because I did want to end it on...
Hopefully not Wrexham Cardiff.
Wrexham Cardiff next season, hopefully. Yeah. Wrexham Cardiff this season we'll talk about a lot, but off camera. But, I mean, I still find it kind of mad that you're creeping up the league as much as you are, right?
Yeah.
Is it going to stay that way? Do you reckon you can finish in the playoffs this year?
Yeah, look, I think the playoffs would be great. I think there's not a Wrexham fan on this planet, well, maybe in America, but in Wrexham who, wouldn't have kind of, taken on the first day of the season, top 15, like just survival would have been great. To be in a position now where it's competitive and the quality of football, going up through the divisions, the quality of football has been terrible, right? Like there have been games where you've come out of there thinking, how have they won that, right? This season, it's a different story. The quality of football is wonderful. And I don't know. I think playoffs is likely. I don't think promotion is likely, but there's been investment in the transfer window, and yeah, it's great. And I've got, young niece and nephew who are, seeing that being your first experience of local football. That's not what we grew up on. Like we grew up on a different Wrexham altogether. So yeah, hopefully long it may continue, but the spotlight it puts on Wales, and I think that's the fascinating thing as a GOG, seeing Wrexham getting more search traffic than Cardiff and the rest of Wales and all that kind of stuff, which was unthinkable. It's fascinating, but it's the kind of thing that you can't design a strategy around that kind of, in terms of getting the Welsh brand out there. You can't create a strategy like that. It was a once in a lifetime moment, I think. And even now when you're seeing other celebrities investing in it, doesn't get the same cachet because of the way they've done it. And they've got way more decisions right than wrong so far. So yeah.
It does pain me as a Cardiff fan to say they've done an incredible job. And in fairness to Rob and Ryan, as a reporter who covered the initial, takeover, you couldn't have even began to suggest that this was possible. Getting to the championship in 3 seasons, and I really hope you don't go up. Not because for football reasons necessarily, but because I do want a good Cardiff, Wrexham, and Cardiff Swansea fixture next year. Yeah. Just a shame that Newport are probably going to fall out of the league. But
no, they'll be okay. They'll be okay. Yeah, they'll be okay.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Shrewsbury, you might want to watch out for them.
Okay, fair enough. Well, you count them, do you?
No, as in dropping down.
Oh, I see.
Newport will take Shrewsbury out. So
fair enough. Well, I'll introduce you to Jason downstairs. A die-hard Newport County fan. He needs a bit of a lift at the minute. Gareth, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. I always finish all of these conversations by asking, what advice would you give to your younger self?
To my younger self, that's a really good question.
To put you on the spot.
Yeah, I've kind of gone through a life of like I dropped out of university twice. It never fitted for me. It was never my kind of thing, and I've always had this sense of trying to find my place in the world. And I think the thing, it's almost a bit of like, don't sweat it, but put yourself in a position where interesting things can come about. Right? We were talking about that Prime Minister's thing earlier. Like going into there, I felt like an absolute imposter, but I'd earned my place, right? And it's that bit about you've got to put yourself in uncomfortable positions to see what you can come up with and see what you can do. And I've had a lot of luck. I've had a lot of, good fortune come my way as well. It's not all down to graft. I don't believe in that, work hard and anything. But no, you've got to put yourself in a position where luck can coincide with opportunity. So yeah, put yourself into weird and bizarre situations, I'd say.
Like a podcast.
Like a podcast, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, as I say, Gareth, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. We'll have a conversation again soon. Make sure to read Gareth's column every month. It's absolutely fascinating, but specifically this one, all about business rates. You can catch that in Businessin Wales magazine. But thank you very much for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. The Businessin Wales Podcast, sponsored by Sinclair Group, the business media for Wales.